Hey, what's going on, everybody? Stan Rado with you again, and we are rolling in 2021, and that's an exciting thing. The reality is that 2020 in many ways brought for us some new opportunities, some new challenges. In 2020, somewhere along the way, you might have gotten hurt by someone else. Maybe you inadvertently hurt someone else. One of the trends in society is to come up with a word of the year, something you want to focus on throughout the year. Some people choose the word joy or peace or gather, or maybe you're, an overachiever and you choose live, laugh, love, But you've got your word of the year and you're going for it. And if I had to pick a word of the year for 2021, I think the word that I would go with is the word forgive. There's a great story from the book of Genesis that talks about the story and shares the story of a man by the name of Joseph. Now, you're probably familiar with this story. His brothers sell him into slavery because he's kind of a obnoxious teenage kid who shares his bigwig dreams, and he ends up sold off into slavery in Egypt, and he goes through at least 13 years there of some pretty crazy stuff in and out of prison, and it's just kind of crazy for Joseph at the end of the book of Genesis. At the very end, as Egypt is going through this season of famine, Joseph has risen to a position of power. He's the second most powerful person in all of Egypt. His brothers, who had sold him into slavery, come to Egypt looking for food. And he goes through kind of a series of tests with them and talks about their younger brother and asks about their father. And he's trying to get a gauge of where his family is and if his father's still alive and if his brother, youngest brother, is still alive. And he kind of puts them through these tests. And eventually he reveals himself to them. His father ends up in Egypt. The whole family moves into Egypt and is cared for there by Joseph and the Egyptians. But then, as is obvious, his father grows old and passes away. And now the brothers who sold Joseph into slavery are left with Joseph and no father to make sure that they are safe. And so the brothers get a little concerned. And this is what happens in Genesis chapter 50, starting in verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said to one another, "If Joseph is holding a grudge against us, he will certainly repay us for all the suffering we caused him." So they sent this message to Joseph. "Before he died, your father gave a command. Say this to Joseph, 'Please forgive your brother's transgression and their sin, the suffering they caused you. Therefore, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father.' Joseph wept when their message came to him. His brothers also came to him and bowed down before him and said, 'We are your slaves.' But Joseph said to them, 'Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me. God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. Therefore, don't be afraid. I will take care of you and your children.' And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them." Every one of us is in one of two positions, really, when it comes to life and interpersonal relationships with other people. You've either been hurt by someone or you've inadvertently hurt someone yourself. If you're watching this and you've been hurt by someone recently, I want to encourage you to be like Joseph, to not take the opportunity to hold that pain and hurt over their heads, but to release it, to forgive them, to not make decisions with their face in mind in an attempt to get back at them or to hurt them or to undermine them, but to do what Joseph does and to legitimately forgive. What you meant for evil, God has meant for good. If you're watching this and you've inadvertently hurt someone else, I want to encourage you to be more like the brothers, to be humble, to seek forgiveness, to seek reconciliation, to attempt to restore the relationship that may have been broken because of something that you have done. So I think the word for the year is the word forgive. Forgiveness, reconciliation, to come back together. It's one of the greatest things that we can possibly do, not only as followers of Jesus, but as people in general. And the way we ultimately get to that place of forgiveness and reconciliation is by experiencing God's forgiveness for us, for ourselves personally. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of His great love that He had for us, made us alive with Christ. Even though we were dead in trespasses, you are saved by grace. God has done so much through His Son, Jesus Christ, to reconcile you, to save you, to forgive you of the sins that you have committed against Him. And when you experience the grace and the forgiveness of God the Father, you can then extend that to others. It was Joseph who said, "What you meant for evil, God has meant for good." Who is it in your life maybe that the relationship is just a little bit off? Something isn't quite right. You hurt them, they hurt you, and there's some bitterness that's beginning to develop. Maybe 2021 is the year that you say, I want to extend to others the forgiveness that I have received from God Himself. I hope and pray you'll find that as you go through your year, that you will forgive, you will be forgiven by those who are around you, and that we will each walk more like Christ in a forgiving spirit every single day.